Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents The Formation Code, set in the Human Chronicles universe, by T.R. Harris. Narrated by Perry Daniels. Prologue. Although the results were not as he hoped, Cannon did have to look at the positive effects of the experiment. At least now he knew how to kill a lot of biologics, and in a most horrific manner. Disrupting DNA formation in the body had a profound effect, and one that came on suddenly and with dramatic results. It was encouraging, if not messy. Cannon's latest robotic body had a full range of sensory receptors, including smell. It was his way of experiencing what it was like to be alive in the sense of organic beings. He'd programmed the carrier to respond to stimuli, to the point where the android vomited a few moments before. Now the foul taste permeated his senses. He would have to rethink the programming. Such input was distracting, and in another part of his mind, disgusting. But it gave him a better sense of what he was facing. To understand the distractions of biologics to a variety of stimuli would help him in his research. He did not want to kill all life in the galaxy, and knowing what it would take to affect the sensibilities of the masses was crucial. It made the sacrifices of these rotting, foul-smelling piles of organic material an essential cog in a much larger wheel, even though that was not the initial purpose of the experiment. The indigenous species were not of a prime classification. However, they shared a similar genetic makeup to the majority of advanced life in the galaxy. The demise of this small group would be noticed, but not missed. They contributed nothing to the welfare of the galaxy. Cannon was expecting a more positive reaction to the strain, something that would transform the native ryols, rather than melt them. He was studying combinations and attempting to learn from them. This was his 7th such experiment, each with similar results. But what bothered Cannon most was the realization that there were a near infinite number of combinations possible. So far, both here in the field as well as in his laboratory, no pattern had yet been detected. He'd spent a standard year with his experiments, and he was no closer to a solution than the first day he created the stack. He had to accept the inevitable. At the pace of his experiments, it would take thousands, if not millions of years, to test every combination. That wasn't practical, and for a variety of reasons. Cannon took one last look at the windswept remains of the village as his mechanical mind reached a conclusion. He needed the code, and from that moment on, all his efforts were spent in its acquisition. Chapter 1. As a general rule, humans can run faster than most aliens. However, Adam Cain was learning there were always exceptions to the rule. The thing chasing him was fast, damn fast, and it was catching up to him as he sprinted down the seemingly endless underground corridor, clutching the prize he held in the small satchel across his chest, keeping it safe. He knew it was fragile, so he wasn't about to take any chances that it could get damaged. He'd risked his life to get it, and he wasn't about to blow it now. He was approaching a short stairway leading up to the next level, with the fleet-footed alien breathing heavily only steps behind. This seemed as good a time as any to try something radical. As he raced up to the first step, Adam put on the brakes, sliding along the smooth floor until his right foot contacted the base of the first step. He came to a sudden stop, much more immediate than the creature behind was expecting. Adam leaned back, making his body rigid. Something hard hit the back of his skull, while the long arms of the lanky beast wrapped around him. Adam bent over, taking one of the arms and pulling it forward. It wasn't hard to flip the alien. Its momentum helped with that. and a moment later the fur-covered creature was on its back, thrashing about as Adam pinned it against the first 5 steps of the stairway. Adam smashed down with his right fist into the face of the alien, collapsing the short snout into the skull. That was when Adam realized why his pursuer was so fast. It was tall, limber, and with extraordinarily long legs, but its bones were wafer thin, reducing the creature's overall weight. Even the thin layer of tense muscles covering the body wasn't enough to resist the strike from the human. The crunch of breaking bone was distinctive and familiar, and a moment later Adam was up and running again, leaving the corpse behind.
"Adam Cain, why do you insist on interfering with my business?"
said an accented voice in his head. Adam was only vaguely aware that his ATD could detect accents, giving the mental voice an identifiable quality. "Because you interfered with mine. If you remember, you stole the disc from us originally."
"And you took it from the Gracilians initially. I can play this game all day long."
There were noises up ahead, shouts of command. More of Stemmel's henchmen were closing in. The chase animal did its job, herding Adam into the kill zone. Through his new ATD, Adam could detect the energy signatures of 6 weapons located in corridors to the side of the main tunnel. They came from a combination of MK and Xanfees. He'd already discovered that the guns in Stemmel's underground complex came fitted with proprietary firing circuits, which meant a standard Formilian ATD couldn't affect them. That was fine. Penor and Lila built his new brain interface device to overcome that deficit. Adam mentally located the battery packs in the devices. All energy weapons needed batteries, and Adam's ATD could sever the power from the source. Even more, if he had time, he could reroute the electricity back into the units until they overloaded, becoming miniature bombs. The problem was Stemmel's troops also carried projection blades, deadly swords that had 2,000-degree laser filaments running along the edges. If their energy weapons became inert, they would revert to the swords. Adam would have to blow the weapons. However, there were 6 of them. If they all went off at once, it would destroy a large chunk of the tunnel and create a catastrophic cave-in, potentially trapping him inside. He smiled. But that didn't mean he couldn't overload a couple of pistols and let the resulting explosions take out the other members of the ambush team.
"You know what I'll do next,"
Stemmel said in Adam's mind.
"Beyond the projection swords, I'll use ballistic weapons, devices you can't affect with your ADD, no matter what upgrades you may have."
"It's not an ADD, it's called an ATD. If you're going to have one, you could at least call it by the right name."
"Through all the years I've studied you, I've never known you to take anything seriously. I can see you're the same old Adam Cain."
"You mean witty and charming to a fault?"
"To the end. That's more appropriate."
Adam could sense the anger in Stemmel's thoughts. He had a lot of experience communicating through his interface device, but he couldn't remember ever having such a clear read on another person's thoughts. He could almost see what Stemmel was seeing.
"Please, Herr Cain, just return the disc. If you do, I'll let you and Riyadh Tazi go. The galaxy is so much more interesting with you in it."
"I think I'll take my chances."
"I offered,"
Stemmel thought.
"You do know you have another kilometer of tunnel before you reach the surface. After that, you have to go up against my mobile units. I'm sure you weren't anticipating having to fight your way out of my bunker, otherwise you would have brought an army."
"I always assume things will go to shit. Nothing I do is easy or according to plan. You've studied me long enough to know that much is true. But here I am, still alive and kicking."
"Not for long."
Adam had a working knowledge of the underground complex of corridors, offices, and workspaces that the former regional director for Maris Kliss took over as his new headquarters. They were part of the old Gracilian dark matter research facility, where the original DE starships had been designed and built. The mutants, Tantor and Lila, found schematics of the complex on Navaris, yet it was more from his reading of the weapon signatures coming from the 100 or so foot soldiers Stemmel had on site that told him most about the complex. He followed their movements in his mind's eye, tracing intersecting corridors and attack positions, such as the one he was quickly approaching. And if Adam did manage to make it to the surface, Stemmel had even more troops awaiting for him topside. There had to be 100 or more, and clustered in 8 separate spots, which could be tanks or armored vehicles. Adam wasn't sure the exact number, but Stemmel had somewhere around 80,000 mercenaries making up his security force on the 26 worlds he now owned in the Dead Zone. Most would be here on Gracilia with their employer. Adam smiled again. Yes, an army would come in handy about now, but he didn't have one. Only his friend Riyadh waiting outside. The smile quickly vanished.
"I see you coming,"
Riyadh said in Adam's mind. His thoughts came in on a different frequency than Stemmel's, keeping the conversation private between the two friends.
"There's a welcome party for you out here. I would suggest an alternative exit."
"What do you have in mind?"
"A small service elevator, about 200 meters ahead, and to your right. But first you have a roadblock to get past."
"I see them. I'm about to take care of that." A voice broke into Adam's thoughts, strong and with a slight echo in its resonance.
"Collapse the exit if he gets past the ambush,"
said Stemmel's heavily German-accented voice.
"And use minimal force to subdue. He has something of value that cannot be damaged."
Adam laughed in his mind.
"What's so funny?"
Riyadh asked. "It's Stemmel. He doesn't know how to use my old ATD well enough that he's broadcasting his thoughts in the clear, even while he's giving orders to his troops. What a jerk."
"That could come in handy,"
Riyadh said.
"His ATD isn't completely tuned to his brainwaves yet. It's still tuned to yours. We're just lucky he doesn't know how to use it well enough to track our movements."
"That's just a matter of time," Adam thought. "He has the best scientists money can buy on his payroll. I'd be surprised if there weren't even a few Formillions among them. Even then, he hasn't had any formal training on how to use the ATD. It could take him a while to figure it out."
"Let's hope so."
"Okay, get ready. Things are about to go boom down here." Adam didn't break stride as 2 simultaneous explosions rocked the tunnel in front of him. Smoke and fire billowed out from both sides of the intersection, littering the main corridor in bloody alien body parts. Adam hurdled them and ran into the hot smoke cloud before bursting out of it farther along the tunnel. "Where to now?" he asked Riyadh.
"Turn right at the next intersection. I'm looking at the schematics. If they're accurate, there's a service elevator at the end that will bring you to the surface. You'll still be within 100 feet or so of the troops waiting outside, but you'll be behind them. I'm moving into position. You'll be in the open and able to take full advantage of Tantor's ATD upgrades. The bastard."
Riyadh was still upset that he only had a stripped-down version of an artificial telepathy device, the ATD, while Adam had the super deluxe top-shelf unit, recently designed by the mutant geniuses. It had every bell and whistle Tantor and Lila could think of, and Adam was still discovering little things it could do. According to Riyadh, it wasn't fair that Adam always got the Porsche, while he and Sherry had to settle for the Civic. Adam made a mental note to insist on an upgrade for Riyadh and Sherry. Although he liked being treated special by the mutants, having his friends, and frequent comrades in arms, equipped with the most advanced ATDs could come in handy. Like now. About all Riyadh could do was track energy signals and talk to him telepathically. That left the heavy fighting up to Adam. He was getting tired of having to do everything himself. Adam was surprised that this new corridor wasn't guarded. He detected security cameras in the overhead and quickly disabled them with a mental command. Although Stimmel couldn't track him through the ATD, he could through the cameras. Adam began to question Riyadh's directions. If there was an exit here, he should see it by now. Elevators ran on electricity, but Adam wasn't detecting anything other than ceiling lights. A minute later, he found out why. "It's not an elevator, dickhead," he said to Riyadh through his ATD. "It's an air vent of some kind."
"It looks like an elevator shaft on the drawings. Blame the architect, not me."
Scanning back along the corridor, he could see another dozen troops coming his way. They'd closed on the site of the explosion, and then fanned out, checking the side corridors when Adam failed to continue along the main tunnel. Adam examined the metal grate covering the air vent. The assembly complex was in the desert, but being buried deep underground allowed it to avoid the radical temperature swings from outside. Fresh air still had to be brought in and stale air vented. This station was but one of dozens throughout the complex. Adam ripped off the screen and looked inside. There was a long shaft extending both below his current level and then to the surface in the other direction. No natural light filtered down from above, meaning there would be impediments on his way up. He moved inside the shaft. There was a service ladder embedded in the concrete wall to his right. He scampered up. The main tunnel for the complex was located 100 feet below the surface, with 3 other levels above. At each floor, Adam passed through a pressure hatch and into a circular work area where technicians could service the pumps and fans of the ventilation system. Fortunately, none of the doorways were locked. He made steady progress toward the surface. Adam and Riyadh came to the planet Gracilia a month after Stimmel made it his new home base. With the dark matter collector scandal out in the open, Maris Kliss had no choice but to ask Stimmel to step down from his position as regional director and leave the planet Woken. Stimmel obliged, and moved to the Dead Zone to settle on Gracilia, one of the 26 worlds the company owned in the region. The fabulously wealthy and influential former MK executive came with a full entourage, comprised of attendants, advisors, and a massive security force. He already had thousands of mercenaries occupying the worlds he owned. Gracilia was no exception. In light of the scandal, Adam expected that MK would reclaim their property. The director purchased them on behalf of the company, but after being terminated, MK summarily transferred ownership to him. They even gave him the 200,000 employees who worked the planets, along with the security detail. And for all this, the company got nothing in return. That wasn't like MK. They always got their pound of flesh in every transaction, except this one. Apparently having 2 dark matter collectors in his possession gave Stimmel an inordinate amount of negotiating power. Once on the planet, Stimmel made an exception to a rule he had in place on the other 25 worlds. He would allow the native Gracilians to return to their homeworld. The move came as a surprise to the rest of the Dead Zone, and gave hope to other refugee groups that he might amend his moratorium and allow them to return to their homes as well. That didn't happen. Instead, he continued to populate the other planets with only mercs and employees. And in return for his magnanimous gesture, the Gracilians were now his loyal allies and confidants, something Adam feared because of their knowledge of the Aris, dark matter, and the formation. Adam and Riyadh's primary mission was to retrieve the remaining 2 dark matter collectors Stimmel stole from the mutants. Adam's team had already recovered 1, but the 2 remaining DMCs were still enough to destroy the galaxy if properly configured. They needed to get them back. But they were nowhere to be found in the vast underground complex. Adams knew ATD could detect dark matter, and he'd struck out in identifying any beyond the small readings associated with DE starships. Either Stemmel had them somewhere else on the planet, or they weren't on Gracilia. So instead of recovering the DMCs, Adam had to settle for the solitary formation disk the Director's thieves had taken from the mutants' laboratory at Camp Forrester 3 months before. Even so, the mission was a bust. The mutants already had a disk. Adam wasn't sure what a second would do for them, but he didn't want to leave empty-handed, if he could leave at all. There was still the matter of the troops waiting for him on the surface.
"Hurry up!"
Riyadh screamed into Adam's mind.
"The troops are repositioning. Stemmel knows you're in the shaft."
"I'm escaping as fast as I can."
"I'll see if I can distract them."
Riyadh was lying atop a low dune, overlooking the valley where the mercenaries clustered. Below was the primary access into the underground complex, a massive elevator designed to lift dark-energy starships from their assembly areas. Here was to be Adam's exit point, but it wasn't going to turn out like that. 100 troops now sat atop armored personnel carriers, waiting for him to emerge. The Director, Wolfgang Stemmel, knew of Adam's abilities, and he was taking no chances with the enhanced human. It was mid-morning on this part of Gracilia. 4 hours earlier, Adam had slipped inside the complex. But when his mission to find the DMCs went bust, he took the extra time to track down the missing formation disk. The delay cost him the cover of darkness, and now Adam would be emerging into daylight and in full view of the waiting troops. This was not good. Riyadh lay on the rapidly heating sand, watching the troops regroup. The word was out that Adam was on his way to the surface through a secondary exit located at the base of the hill. Riyadh had placed 4 bars, big-ass rifles, along the ridgeline, each separated by 40 feet or so. Bars were the most powerful handheld energy weapons in the galaxy. They would help, but how much against 100 seasoned troops and 8 APCs? Riyadh had one of the weapons pressed against his cheek, spotting through the magnified viewfinder. The enemy troops were within the range of the bar, and the rifle did carry a bolt capacity of 90. He was about to find out what the rate of fire was for the weapon, as well as how fast he could run in the light gravity of Gracilia. Riyadh began firing, saturating the nearest APC with tight blue energy bolts. The balls of concentrated plasma travel at such high velocity that their passage appears more like a ray than a separate shot. This helped with targeting, but it also drew a direct line back to the shooter. Pandemonium broke out on the field below. The powerful bolts penetrated the armor like it was butter. The troops were even less of a concern. An APC exploded, throwing body parts high into the air. Riyadh continued pressing the trigger, right up to the moment several long-barrel flash cannons locked onto his position and prepared to fire. Riyadh was off a moment later, discarding the bar and sprinting below the ridge line and out of sight of the troops. A moment later, the spot where he'd been laying exploded, as a half a dozen Starship-rated cannon bolts plowed into the sand. He was barely far enough away to survive the concussion. Riyadh plopped down in the sand at the next bar and lifted the weapon, sighting on one of the flash cannon below. More blue beams flared out, taking out more troops and more equipment. The enemy was better prepared this time. They knew the general vicinity of the opposition, so it didn't take long to readjust their aim. Riyadh was off again before firing even 20 bolts from the second bar.
"Adam, get your ass up here. I'm running out of hill."
"I'm here, off to your left."
"No time for sightseeing. The ship is at the base of the dune. Get to it."
By the time Riyadh reached the third bar, Stemmel's troops had figured out his strategy. Riyadh didn't make it to the spot before the hill exploded from multiple bolt impacts. Riyadh was thrown into the air, flipping over several times before landing 20 feet down the steep incline of the hill. The sand was soft and cushioning, and he was up a moment later, unharmed, sprinting for the speeder at the base of the dune. Adam was angling in from his right.
"Can't you disable the frickin' cannon?"
Riyadh asked through his ATD. "I could if I had the time. It's a little hard to concentrate while you're running for your life. But I can get the speeder fired up. Be ready to lift the moment we get there." The speeder was a modified Zarin dual-engine Sprinter. The modified part came from the third gravity generator placed atop the fuselage between the other two gens. It had no sleeping quarters, no galley, and no head. It was merely a two-seat rocket, faster than anything in the area. Hopefully. At the moment, it was their only way off the planet. The canopy was open, and the two commandos met at the craft simultaneously. Each used their enhanced human strength to jump the remaining 20 feet before slamming against the now blistering hot metal hull, heated up by the relentless Corsillian sun.
"Ah, damn, this is hot!"
Riyadh bitched as he grasped hold of anything he could to keep from slipping off the starship. "No shit," Adam cried out. "And you're in my way. Move!" Riyadh tumbled headfirst into the cockpit. Adam was a breath behind him. Riyadh's legs stuck out from where the pilot should be sitting, and it took him an awkward moment to reorient himself. Adam was already strapped into the back seat, and the canopy closing by the time Riyadh positioned himself at the flight controls. He didn't bother fastening his seatbelt before gunning the chemical engines. That was a mistake. The acceleration was so intense that Riyadh was thrown back out of the seat, landing in Adam's lap and leaving no one at the controls. Arms and legs flailed as Adam pressed against Riyadh, fighting the G-forces to get Riyadh back in the front seat. The ship launched at a slight lift-off angle, which was adequate for the flat desert topography. To a point. The Zarin bounced off the top of a small dune, upsetting Riyadh again and plopping him back into Adam's lap. The flight path of the starship was upset, enough that it soon contacted the ground and skidded along the hardpack, the scraping sound inside the vessel like that of a wood chipper on steroids. With their speed stabilizing, Riyadh no longer had to fight against the acceleration. He hooked first one leg, then the other, over the back of the pilot seat and lifted with his body scrunched up against the canopy. He barely fit. A moment later, he dropped down into the pilot seat. Having learned his lesson, Riyadh grasped at the waist and shoulder harnesses and fastened them, while the ship bounced along the desert floor. "Look out!" Adam yelled from the back seat. Riyadh pulled his attention from the belt buckle to the forward viewport. Another hill. No, a rock outcropping, was dead ahead. Riyadh groped for the control stick, missing it the first time when the ship bounced again. He caught it the second time and violently yanked back on the lever. The ship missed the jagged volcanic rock by inches and now angled for space at a steep 80-degree rate of climb. "Some air pressure might be nice," Adam said from behind Riyadh. They were already passing 100,000 feet, and Riyadh had failed to pressurize the cockpit. A second later, things were copacetic, with the black of space directly ahead of them.
"Engaging the gravity drive,"
Riyadh breathed with relief.
"Flight time to Navaris, 16 hours. The in-flight movie will be Die Hard, the original. Yippee-ki-yay, mother—"
"We get the idea, Riyadh. Let's at least keep this rated PG." Riyadh snorted and flashed his trademark white smile at the stars beyond the window.
"Why start now?"
Chapter 2. Adam entered the mutant's lab on Camp Forrester to find it crowded with dignitaries. Foremost among them was the Union ambassador, Jean Euchre. She was surrounded by an assortment of military and political figures, including both Lionel, the president of Navaris, along with his deputy, Sherry Valentine. They gathered around a monitor displaying a link with a narrator, wearing hazmat gear and flanked by several other officials, similarly dressed. They were walking through a village of stick-built structures, as an assortment of domesticated alien animals feasted on piles of brown...
Sample complete. Ready to continue?